New images show Marines aboard the USS Fort Lauderdale, escorted by the destroyer Stockdale transiting offshore, a mere 7 miles from Venezuela. Those Marines just wrapped up a week of training here in Trinidad, part of the show of force known as Operation Southern Spear in the Caribbean. Today, the state Department designated a cartel linked to Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro as a foreign terrorist organization, with the administration accusing Maduro and his generals of enriching themselves in the drug trade. If the drug cartels go out of business, so does the Maduro regime. The administration says the new designation opens up the cartel to airstrikes, claiming the same legal authority used to destroy suspected drug boats. Should President Trump give the green light, there is plenty of firepower in the Caribbean. This newly released photo aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford shows an electronic warfare jet used to jam enemy radar and destroy surface-to-air missile sites. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Racing Kane, has arrived in Puerto Rico to receive an operational update on Southern Sphere, as lawmakers from both sides remain skeptical of the administration's plans. What lies ahead could be worse than what we have now. Historically, the United States' intervention in Central America or South America has not always rolled out the way we'd hope. President Trump says he wants to speak with Maduro, who appeared at a rally Friday calling for dialogue, not conflict. Not another one. Applause after the FAA warned airliners to avoid flying over Venezuela. Some foreign carriers have canceled flights to Caracas. Tonight, F-18 Super Hornets from the USS Gerald R. Ford have linked up with a B-52 bomber to fly another show of force mission off the coast of Venezuela. Brett Lucas Thomason not far from that coast. Lucas, thanks. Trump administration is reportedly set to launch a new phase of operations against Venezuela in the coming days, apparently aiming to overthrow dictator Nicolas Maduro. It comes as the U.S. ramps up its military strikes against the alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. Lucas Tomlinson is in Trinidad and Tobago and joins us now with details. Good morning. Tobago Tomato or the island of Trinidad. That works too. Good morning, Charlie Angley and Brian. New warnings from the FAA have canceled several flights from several foreign car carriers to Venezuela after American F-18 Super Hornets, spy planes, and bombers were seen flying off the coast. And now, Reuters out with a new report saying covert action could begin soon inside Venezuela. This comes in a month after President Trump authorized the CIA to conduct those operations. And here's from Reuters. 2 of the U.S. officials said covert operations would likely be the first part of the new action against Maduro. The options under consideration include attempting to overthrow Maduro. Now Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro has remained defiant. Yesterday was his birthday. Late last week, he attended a public rally with college students. Attendance likely mandatory. Rachel Campo Duffy interviewed Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who, like Trump, says Maduro's days are numbered. I completely trust the strategy President Trump is developing and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They know very well with whom they're dealing with. I believe that a Maduro will get a very clear picture of what are his options and what's the future for Venezuela. Maduro started this war. President Trump is ending this war. Now, should President Trump order strikes against the Maduro regime? There's plenty of firepower in the Caribbean to do it. With about 30% of all deployed American warships, including the aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford now on station, there are over 200 Tomahawk cruise missiles in theater aboard destroyers and us, Marines aboard the USS Uema, and other amphibs in the Ready Group. Now, ahead of Thanksgiving, the U.S. military's top officer, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Racing Kane, arrived in Puerto Rico yesterday to meet the forces who are part of Operation Southern Spear. So, with General Kane in the region, we'll have to see if Secretary Hegst follows suit ahead of Thanksgiving. And one thing officials have said is some of this buildup in the Caribbean goes beyond the Maduro regime. It's about getting Russia, China, and Iran out of the Western Hemisphere, guys. And how is that not in our national interest? Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Lucas. A lot of firepower. And look, we can't spend a lot of time on this. There's so many big stories today. But just check out the Wall Street Journal. They talk about South. The headline is South America's turning more right-wing and getting Trumpier. What they're doing is more and more are electing from Chile to what we saw in Bolivia. More electing cons Panama, more electing more and more conservatives. Even the guy in Brazil is in trouble. So, it's not healthy to be against the president. What he wants to do is not dominate these countries. He just wants these countries not to be dominated by China, Russia, and Iran. And with that, let's bring in former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo, a Fox News contributor. Great to have you with us today, Mike. Let's start with the Caribbean and then we'll move to Ukraine, if I may. The presence of General Kane in the area, the ramp up of our forces in the area. Where do you think this is going? And do you believe that the White House that President Trump wants to see Maduro toppled? Well, Martha, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on. The fact that Mr. Kane is there is telling. I'm glad he's going there to thank the troops. I'm confident he's going there for more than that. Not only to send a message, but to listen and to learn about what capabilities we have and what we can deploy and how successful it might be. I do think that this administration understands that this is all part of a larger puzzle, right? The Venezuelans, supported by the Cubans, the Russians, and the Chinese, now in our own neighborhood. And getting rid of Maduro gives the Venezuelan people a shot, keeps us safer. So I think that this administration is very serious about continuing to ratchet up the pressure on the regime such that the Venezuelan people get an opportunity to have a leadership that can actually protect them and give them a shot at prosperity. What do you think the chances are of Maduro being toppled? Because President Obama also wanted to see Maduro toppled and he's still there. Yeah, well, we took a shot at it in the first Trump administration too, Martha. You'll recall that as we were working along that to put pressure on Maduro and his regime. We were not successful at giving the Venezuelans what they needed. This time they've been willing to do more. We never know how these end. When you least expect these things, sometimes they happen. And I think that the leadership in Venezuela, outside of Maduro, now can see that there is a window, and maybe with enough opportunity and enough pressure, we can deliver that outcome. It would be a really good thing for the people of the region, in addition to the people here in America. All right, Secretary Pompeo. Let's take a look at the map of Ukraine and the area that Russia has successfully taken over and the area that they might gain some additional territory in as we look at this 28-point deal. When you read this deal, the initial deal, and we know it's evolving, what went through your mind? And would you have said yes to it if you were Zelensky? So when I read it, I took out two things on board. One is this is an opening salvo. Was not going to be the final deal. Had I been President Zelensky, I suppose I would have rejected it just as he clearly has. But I would have also seen it as the fact that my country's at an inflection point. We've been fighting this war for a long time. Maybe we can build off of this to get to something that's acceptable. And I think Zelensky, and I think for Secretary Rubio in America, we're going to land in the same place. 1. We don't trust a single thing Vladimir Putin signs, right? No matter what he signs, that it's not particularly meaningful. This will be hard-powered deterrence that will have to be put in place. And you can see the security guarantees starting to take shape that might achieve that. And then second, Ukraine has to have independence, both political and military. The capability to continue to defend itself in the years ahead. If they can get a model, an agreement that leads that same place, the fact that we may have to accept that the Russians are continued to hold this ground for a while, the ground that they took by aggression, the evil war that they started, it may be that is an outcome. That is a maximalist outcome for Ukraine and for Europe, and frankly for the United States that can be achievable today. I mean, pretty much everything that has been presented to Russia, they've shot down. And they're losing 20,000 people a month, which is what they lost in the entire Afghanistan war. What do you think about how much pressure Putin is under? We know he doesn't really appear to care too much about how many people he loses, at least up until now. But do you think he's at a point where he might be willing to make some sort of deal to end this thing, at least for now? Martha, I've seen no evidence of that. Apparently, he was prepared to take that 28-point deal where he was given some land he hasn't been able to take. That's perhaps not surprising. It wouldn't surprise me if he would have rejected that and asked for more. Again, I haven't seen any evidence that he's prepared to lay down his weapons. We should all keep in mind, President,